Thank you so much for joining me for night one, session one of the business of purpose. This is where we align our purpose and our profitability. I believe that purpose and profit work better together. Say it with me. You could drop it in the chat. Purpose and profit work better together. I believe your place of purpose is your place of provision. And that's one of the reasons why this topic, that's one of the reasons why the business of purpose is so important to me. I remember a couple of years ago, we had a kitchen tap, and the tap, when you closed it all the way, it would make this drip, drip, drip. And I remember my dad saying he found a solution to the dripping tap. And he told us instead of closing it all the way, just to go half of the way. Now, funny thing about it is my dad taught all of us how to allow this tap to function in this function. So now instead of us closing the tap all of the way, we would close it half of the way. When simply, I think it was like a rubber or something of that sort that needed to be changed so that the leak would stop. But my point of this story is that we were able to allow the tap to function for a longer time, but by not letting it go all of the way, but letting it go half of the way. Now, I'm sure you could guess what happened after a couple months. It did work, guys, for a couple months, but can anybody guess? Like, can anybody guess what happened after a couple months? We were sleeping one night and we heard this loud explosion. Something just went boom. And it was the sound of the water pressure coming up through that kitchen tap. I mean, it was flooded, there was water everywhere. And this was as a result of going half of the way, but not going all the way. I say that to say that many of us, in terms of how we're showing up in our purpose and our business, we've been able to function, and some of us function for a very long time, and we've been able to function by going half of the way, but not going all of the way. How would your life and your business change? How would your family dynamics change? How would your results, your impact change? If you didn't just find a way to function, but you found a way to go all of the way instead of going half of the way. That's where we start our discussion tonight in purpose and profit working well together. They definitely go together. They're not enemies of each other. They're actually, I think, best friends. I want you to think of it as a man standing in front of a piece of empty land. And as he stands in front of this empty land, he has a blueprint in one hand, the left hand. And then on the left side, he has the tools. He has the things that he needs to construct this building. That's kind of how I see purpose and profit. I see purpose as the blueprint, as the thing that guides us forward, but I see the profit as the tools that come together. And I see purpose on the left and I see profit on the right, but only when the two come together and they align. It's like a perfect God-given, God-centered reality. But some people have been living either on one side of the spectrum where they are focused more on, yes, I know my purpose, I know who I am, I know why I exist, and others just on the profit pathway. But the perfect marriage for the business of purpose is understanding that purpose and profit work better together. They are actually friends and they are not enemies. It's sort of like this. I'm gonna do a little drawing, a little diagram to help you. Let me see if I can pull this up. Just give me a second to just share my screen and to just pull this up. Let me make sure that you guys are able to see my screen. Okay, so I think we got it there. So it's sort of like this. The first thing, and if you're taking good notes, or if you're even going to draw this diagram or screenshot it, this first box here is going to represent land. Now, I call land anywhere there is an expression of your business, anywhere there's an expression of who you are. I call social media free land, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, any platform that you can plant your flag, you can place a message. I call that land. Anywhere you show up offline, whether you speak, whether you train, whether you show up in your career, I call that land. It's the place that has an expression of who you are. Now, there's something that I always say when I'm doing my morning motivation. I say, God, I'm not going to stop until I see with my eyes what I see with my mind. I'm not going to stop until I see with my eyes what I see with my mind. My mind has seen the development of the land, but it takes my purpose and my profit coming together to bring that into the perfect harmony. On the other side of your diagram, I want you to put purpose. And this purpose piece is going to be why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And on this other side, you're going to put profit. And on the profit side is going to be the tools to get it done. Now, if you think on the purpose side, purpose, anytime you're answering a why question, it's a purpose question. Why am I in this business? Why am I in this season? Why do I feel this way? Why am I in this relationship? A why question is always a purpose question. I'm just going to put some categories of where this why question in terms of our answers under the purpose section. So it may be related to others, helping others, your impact of other people, any extension of yourself. It may be about family. I'm doing this because, my family dynamics. This is why this is important to me. Or it could be yourself, your self-belief that you have this strong conviction or this belief of a specific thing that answers your why. Now, in terms of profit, we're going to go with process, product, pricing. These are all connected under the profit lane. Now, for purpose and profit to come together, remember, purpose and profit work better together. They are not enemies, they are friends. We're going to need this vehicle. And this vehicle is your business. Now, we started from the place of we had the land and we had the blueprint, one on the left, one on the right. And then we developed that further into saying that purpose and profit go better together and they need a vehicle, and that vehicle happens to be your business. But if we link our purpose and our profit to build on this land, you would see that this diagram forms a diamond. And this is where you get the truest expression of all that you're created to be, all that you're created to do, and merging that purpose and that profitability until it becomes a diamond. Now, if we leave out any elements of this diagram, it sort of becomes lopsided because something is missing in the expression of who we are, in the expression of our purpose and our profit. Now, I want to take you to the biblical context of how I was able to even get all of these business principles from the Word of God. Remember, the business of purpose is understanding biblical patterns, biblical strategies, and making practical ways to implement it in our business. Now, this is going to come from Daniel 1. There's some key things that I want to point out in Daniel 1. You can go back and you could read the scriptures yourself, but there's some key things that I'm going to point out, and I want you to go back and look at it with different lens. And The king was looking for a specific group of people, and this group of people, we can see it in Daniel 1 and verse 4. It was children in whom was no blemish, well favored, skillful in all wisdom, cunning in knowledge, and understanding of science, such as had the ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. Now, this is important and this is significant because the tongue of the Chaldeans speaks to a language that influenced culture. A language that's a part of a culture, but it speaks to the language of the Chaldean was more about power, influence, and language. Language having the ability to now influence a generation. Now, a lot of us, how we're showing up in our business, this is important because you should be showing up in your business with language that influences the culture, not the other way around. Now, there are two examples I could think of that where businesses were able to insert language into our vocabulary that now has become so relevant that when we think of certain words or certain things, it becomes synonymous with these businesses. And the first example is going to be Google. Now, I don't know, I don't even know what a Google is. I don't know if you can help me out if you know what a Google is, but one of the things that Google has been able to do is Google has been able to replace the word search in our mind. That every time you think of, I need to search something, you say, I'm going to Google it. So they have now, in a culture, created language that now influences a dynamic as it relates to business. In your business, you should create language that now becomes synonymous with your industry and who you are, and it shifts culture. This is why the king said, I am looking for people who not only learn this, but can teach this because these people will have power and influence. The difference between your business and any other business is going to be how you are able to use language to influence culture, but to also stand powerfully in who you are and to influence industries, influence regions, influence cities, influence states, influence dynamics of culture by inserting yourself into culture, but not blending in with culture. And all of that, guys, I got from Daniel 1 and verse 4 in terms of what the king was saying that the requirements were that they needed to be full of wisdom, that you need to ask God to give you the wisdom as it relates to how do I now show up to solve the problem I am created to solve on the land to now create this dynamic of purpose, profit, my business, and showing up on the land. Now, the second thing that we're going to shift to um, in the book of Daniel, and it comes from Daniel 8, Daniel purpose in his heart that he will not defile himself. These are lessons that we learn from Daniel. So he said, regardless, okay, I get what the king's requirement is, and I know who I am. So I'm going to show up within these requirements, but I will not defile myself to be able to now show up in this dynamic. So in verse 8 of Daniel 1, he purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat nor the wine. So he said, I am not going to have any of the meat, I'm not going to have any of the wine. And he had a specific request. Now, these are the boundaries that Daniel set, and these are the boundaries that you need to show up with in your business, specifically now, where the land, the social landscape, is very loud. There are different voices. But the only thing that's going to make your voice different is not defiling yourself, but also showing and sharing who you are showing up to be. So these are the lessons that we learn from Daniel. Lesson number one is this is who I am. I understand the requirements of the king, but I also understand who I am, and I'm not going to show up in culture to defile myself because of an opportunity. So he said to the prince, he said, listen, this is what we're going to do. For 10 days, and this comes from Daniel 1 and 12, Prove me in 10 days. In 10 days, um, just give us pulse, just give us the vegetables and water. This is all we want. Even though the king has said, yes, I want them to be strong, I want them to be cunning, I want them to have this certain stature, and my meat and my wine is what's going to do this. Daniel set boundary number one is that I'm not going to defile myself based on this request, but I am going to communicate a language that shows distinctly who I am and shows me in culture with power and with influence. Now, this is my challenge to you to do. I want to call it the 10-day test, right? So, this is a principle I got out of the scripture, the 10-day test. But I also want to share the scientific backing of the 10-day test. And remember, in verse 4, the king said, I want people with an understanding of science. I am sharing this for you to see the power of the 10-day test because these are practical tools that you get from biblical principles that you can apply in your business. So the 10-day test, um, neuro, uh, neurologically, science says that at the 10-day mark, you begin to create new neural pathways. An example of a neural pathway is when you've never walked a way before and you start walking that way, it begins to create a pathway. So I'll give an example of like walking, creating a new path in the midst of a forest. Now, the first time you walk, there's going to be a light indentation. It's not going to be very pronounced. It's not going to be very bright. It's going to be a light indentation. The more you walk on that path, day after day, that light indentation now begins to become a track, now begins to become a road, and it now becomes a new pathway that you can walk. This is what happens at 10 days. Yes, it takes 21 days, excuse me, to make or to break a habit, right? But at the 10-day mark, science says if you do something for 10 days, it now creates that new path. So notice Daniel says, you know what? We are doing this for 10 days. But this was their lifestyle. But he told them, we're doing this for 10 days. After 10 days, you could come reevaluate us and see if our results is similar to that of those who are having the king's meat and having the king's wine. But just give us 10 days. I want you to just give your business 10 days. Just do something for 10 days. Just show up for that 10 consistent days. Just tell people who you are for that 10 days. Just tell them what you believe for that 10 days. Do the 10-day test, right? But after the 10 days, I want you to also do an evaluation and a revaluation, just as Daniel did. Now, biology says that dietary shifts, they start at the 10-day mark. So if you are trying to shift your energy, if you're trying to shift like your skin care, biology says that at the 10-day mark, your body now begins to respond to something you've been doing for 10 days, the 10-day test, right? Now, how are we going to apply this in our business? We're going to do these 10-day sprints. And after the 10 days, we are going to evaluate, just as Daniel said to the prince, to see the specific results. So we're going to practice this 10-day principle. But can we tap in? Can we try? I hope you are tracking with me. I hope I'm not going too fast. I hope you are tracking the lessons with me. Now, Daniel could only put out his challenge because he knew the result of the challenge, because of his uh, belief in himself and in God. He knew what the results were going to be. Three main lessons that we get from Daniel is number one, this is who I am. Number two, this is what I believe. And number three, this is how I help. Three main lessons from Daniel. This is who I am, number one. This is what I believe, number two. And this is how I help, number three. So he was not shy about his belief and who he was. Now, remember, we talked about the blueprint in one hand, which is purpose, and the profit on the other hand, um, which is our profit end. And when they come together, it's a perfect alignment because purpose and profit go better together. Purpose and profit work perfect together. Purpose and profit are friends, they're not enemies. Perfect and purpose and profit work better together. So now, when we are showing up in our business with purpose, we are clearly saying to people, this is who I am. When was the last time you told your audience, or have you even told your audience, this is who I am, this is what I believe, this is what I stand for, this is what I don't stand for? The difference between those who are going to succeed in this new dimension of business are those who are able to clearly separate and to be distinctive in the market, just as a Google or just as an Amazon, that when anything you want to buy, you type up Amazon.com because they have now put language on the land, and the language says that we are the space for everything and anything. What are you doing in terms of your business to say that this is who I am? And this is what I believe. And the third lesson from Daniel, this is how I help. Are you clearly planting on the land that mission driven motive, or are you just plugging in your thoughts into AI and why AI is great? And I do use it as my assistant. The people who are going to separate themselves from the noise, the people who are going to separate themselves from what's happening in culture are the people who are now going to build with purpose and profit, but they clearly stand for something. Notice that the king gave the princess an instruction. Daniel said, here's what, I'm going to bargain with this instruction because I'm not going to defile myself based on what God has told me to do because this is your request, but I am going to demonstrate power and influence within your same cultural dynamics. Listen, people listen differently based on how you show up. Are you showing up clearly as the solution? Do you believe that you are the solution? And are you showing up as that solution? My coach, my mentor, Marcus, my business partner, he always says big problems, big paycheck. The bigger the problem you solve, the bigger the paycheck. But do people know you are the solution? Are you even making them problem aware so that they can know clearly what the solution is? This is one of the things that I feel like Daniel was so great at. And now, let's tap into the other principles that we get from Daniel. And I'm just going to paraphrase a little bit, but when you read in Daniel 1 and around verse 20, in the matter of wisdom and understanding, the king inquired of them. He found them to be 10 times better than the magicians, 10 times better than the astrologers that were all in his realm. A realm is a place of influence. So there were people that had influence, but because of Daniel's God power, he didn't only have influence, he had influence to change a dynamic that existed in culture because he knew this is who I am, this is what I believe, and this is how I help. My challenge to you today, as you're listening to session one of the business of purpose, is to stop hiding who you are, stop hiding what you believe, stop hiding how you help. Daniel said to the prince, when you come back to measure us, if we don't measure up to the others in the same realm, then let's talk about it then. But he had such this faith and boldness that he knew even when the king came to do a measure, they didn't have the king's meat, they didn't have the king's wine, but they were stronger, and not only stronger, 10 times stronger. In your industry, I want to challenge you. Are supposed to be the best voice in your industry. You are supposed to be the one that says, listen, this is what I believe. I, Christian Sarah Bowen, firmly believe that your place of purpose is your place of provision. And why do I believe that? Because I don't only believe that your gift gives you access and makes room for you. I believe that your gift has the ability to support your life. So if your gift has the ability to support your life, then there is some type of sustenance, some type of profit, sometimes some type of provision that comes from the gift. But if we have not tapped into that profitability, it's a purpose optimization problem, that this dynamic of purpose on one side and profit on one side needs to come together through the vehicle of business, but I need to be visible on the land and I need to have influence on the land and I need to now show up as a voice on the land and my language must be clear on the land. So Daniel now shows up on the land and they see something different that they have not experienced before. But not only was he different, he was better than. He was better than the magicians. He was better than the astrologers, 10 times better. So in terms of your craft, I want to challenge you, become better. Become better. Stand in your industry knowing that you are the best. I believe hands down, I am the best teacher in terms of purpose. Listen, you may say, listen, that's subjective, that's your own personal, but I have to have that belief to be able to stand and put language in a culture that is now noisy to say that these are the core things that I believe that purpose and profit work better together. That your place of purpose is your place of provision. So the true referral system in your business is transparent service. When the king saw the level of strength, and Daniel and the three Hebrew boys did not defile themselves, now his result now becomes something that the king now says, listen, you are stronger than the people in this realm. So I'm going to pay attention to your voice. Let people pay attention to your business because you're different. Pay attention to your business because of how you show up. Now, we also learn from the story of Daniel that there's a question that was answered that who could point to you? Who could point to you as the service, just as my example of Google and my example of Amazon? Can people point to you because when you live in purpose out loud, opportunities find you. I'll say that again. When you live in purpose out loud, opportunities find you. So this is your charge to not go half of the way. Half of the way it's functional. Yes, it could work, but it's not 10 times better. It's not 10 times stronger. Let's transition. Let's move from showing up in our purpose and in our business, half of the way got that pipe to work, but then there was an explosion, and you might be listening to this message right now, and there might be an internal explosion because it's your heart and your soul and your spirit saying there is more, and saying I've called you to more, and saying that there's something greater. And just like one night we heard that thing erupt and explode, this is your moment where it's a call to more, but it's a call to more because you have been called to be a disruptor in a society where things exist, but where you, excuse me, exist greater because of the God that's within you. You show up with a new language. You show up not defiling yourself. You show up as Daniel saying, this is who I am. This is what I believe, and this is how I help. You need to show up as if you believe that you are the only and best solution because guess what? For the people that need you, you are. This has been session one, the business of purpose. Please do leave me some feedback. Let me know if anything that I've shared today has resonated with you. If you've been able to see the practical link between biblical strategies and how you can now transform your business. If you are ready to stand on the land, but not just stand on the land, stand knowing that your purpose and your profit, they are best friends and they go together. But they use the vehicle of purpose to get you to the place where God needs you to be. But even in that place, there's profitability, there's health, there's wealth assigned. Even in that place, there's a greater call, there's a greater mantle, there's a greater responsibility. Even in that place, the people who will transform this age of business are the people who stand up and share, this is what I believe, but I'm not going to defile myself. I know what culture says, but I also know what's good for me. I know what culture does, but I'm going to be different and go against the grain. And I'm going to impact culture and I'm going to create language in culture and I'm going to show up in culture and disrupt everything that exists because I know that I was sent to be the best. But not only the best, guys, I'm 10 times better, 10 times stronger, 10 times wiser, 10 times more knowledge, and I am the best at what I do. My name is Krisha Sarabo, and this has been the Business of Purpose. Lesson 1. I hope you join me for the next lesson as we continue to build businesses that rely on God, but businesses that are purposeful and profitable. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.